You don't have a money problem. You have a freedom problem. And the scary part? From the outside, it looks like you're winning. Good salary, decent apartment, solid job title, maybe even a cheeky little bonus. You can afford the flights, the dinners, the tech upgrades. Your parents are proud. Your mates think you're doing well. On paper, you're sorted. But here's the uncomfortable truth no one says out loud. High income can be the most expensive trap you'll ever walk into, because the more you earn, the more you build a life that requires you to keep earning. Pause for a second. If your paycheck stopped tomorrow, how long would your freedom last? Not your lifestyle, not your image, your freedom. Most 20, 30-year-olds in corporate America, and yeah, in London, Toronto, Sydney, Zurich, Oslo too, aren't broke. They're dependent, and dependency dressed up as success is dangerous, because it feels safe, until it isn't. And this is where it gets uncomfortable. The very thing you worked hard for, the high income, might be the reason you feel stuck. Let's talk about why, because if you ignore this, it doesn't stay neutral. It compounds. 1. The salary illusion. You remember your first real paycheck. It hit different. You thought, this is it. I'm finally independent. And to be fair, earning your own money does feel powerful. No more asking. No more waiting. You can book the trip, upgrade the phone, move to a better place. But here's the quiet shift that happens next. Your fixed expenses slowly rise to match your identity. Better apartment, because you deserve it. New car, because you've earned it. Nicer clothes, because you're not a student anymore. Nothing extreme, nothing reckless, just normal. And that's the danger. Lifestyle inflation doesn't feel like a mistake. It feels like progress. But every upgrade quietly locks in a new minimum survival number. You're not building freedom. You're raising the cost of staying alive. Let me ask you something slightly awkward. If your income doubled tomorrow, would your freedom double, or would your spending? Be honest. Because most people don't expand options. They expand obligations. And here's the part no one explains when you're 23 and ambitious. A salary is not an asset. It's rented stability. It exists only as long as you trade time for it. The moment you stop showing up, it stops showing up. That's not ownership. That's dependency with good branding. And before you say, yeah, but I'll invest later when I make more, that's exactly where the trap tightens. Because the higher your income gets, the harder it becomes to downgrade your lifestyle. You adapt fast. Humans always do. The new place feels normal in 3 months. The higher rent feels standard. The upgraded life becomes your baseline. Now you can't go backwards, so you can't take risks. So you stay. Even if you hate it, even if you're burnt out, even if you're quietly thinking, is this it? This is where most smart people get stuck. They confuse earning power with leverage, and they are not the same thing. But this is only the first layer. It gets deeper. 2. Cash flow versus control. You probably track income. Maybe you even track expenses. But do you track control? Here's a thought experiment. Imagine 2 people. Person A makes $120,000 a year, spends $100,000, saves the rest in cash, no real assets, no systems, just a good job. Person B makes $70,000 a year, lives on $40,000, invests the difference into assets that produce future cash flow. Who has more freedom? Most people instinctively say person A is ahead. Higher income, better status, more options. But zoom out 5 years. If person A loses their job, the clock starts ticking immediately. If person B loses their job, their assets are still working. This isn't about being extreme or living like a monk. It's about understanding the difference between cash flow and asset building. Cash flow from a job requires your presence. Cash flow from assets does not. One is active, one is leveraged, and here's where it gets uncomfortable again. If 90% of your income depends on you showing up every single week, you don't have income. You have a time contract. That's fine in your 20s. It's even motivating. But if 5 years pass and nothing is compounding outside of you, no investments, no equity, no ownership, then you're just upgrading your cage. That sounds harsh, I know. But it's not about shaming you. It's about awareness. Because most people don't realize this until they're 38, exhausted and over it. Right now, you still have time on your side. And time, mate, is the only asset you can't buy back later. Whether you're in New York, Berlin, or Auckland, the real flex isn't income. It's optionality. Can you say no? Can you walk away? Can you take 6 months off without panic? If the answer is no, then the income isn't freedom. It's maintenance. And this leads to the third layer, the one that hits identity. 3. The identity trap. High income doesn't just change your bank account. It changes who you think you are. You start seeing yourself as successful, You attach your self-worth to your earning ability. So when work is going well, you feel solid. When it's shaky, you feel anxious. That's not financial stability. That's emotional volatility disguised as ambition. Here's a subtle shift that happens. You stop asking, how do I build assets? And start asking, how do I climb faster? Promotion, raise, title, bigger firm, better brand name. There's nothing wrong with ambition, but if all your growth is vertical, inside a structure you don't own, then your ceiling is controlled by someone else. And this is the discomfort moment. If your current path continues exactly as it is, where does it lead? More money? Probably. More responsibility? Definitely. More freedom? Not necessarily. Because responsibility without ownership increases pressure, not control. You become important at work, but replaceable in the system. That's a tough pill, yeah? You can be high-performing, respected, even indispensable to your team, and still have zero leverage in the bigger picture. Companies optimize for profit. You should optimize for ownership. That doesn't mean quitting tomorrow and starting a random side hustle. It means asking a better question. How do I convert earned income into assets that outlive my effort? Because earned income is linear, assets are exponential. And if you ignore that difference long enough, one day you wake up with a high income and no exit. 4. The silent cost of comfort. Comfort is sneaky. It doesn't feel like danger. It feels like relief. Stable job. Predictable paycheck. Routine. You tell yourself, I'll invest more seriously later. I'm still young. True. But here's what most people underestimate. The cost of waiting isn't just financial. It's psychological. Every year you delay asset building, your lifestyle locks in deeper. Your standards rise. Your commitments increase. Your risk tolerance shrinks. At 23, moving back home or living with roommates feels normal. At 31, different story. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes to choose long-term over comfort. And this is where fear creeps in. Because if your income ever drops, recession, layoffs, burnout, health, the entire structure shakes. High income with no assets is fragile. It looks strong, but it's brittle, and brittle things break fast under pressure. This is why some of the calmest, wealthy people you'll ever meet don't obsess over income. They obsess over ownership. Stocks, equity, businesses, index funds, real assets. Not because it's trendy, because it reduces dependency. And dependency is the real risk. Not volatility, not market swings. Dependency. If one source controls your survival, you are exposed. And most 20, 30-year-olds don't realize how exposed they are, because the paycheck keeps coming. Until it doesn't. So what do you do with this? You don't panic. You don't torch your lifestyle. You don't quit your job and move to Bali because some bloke on the internet said freedom. You shift your lens. High income is a tool, not the goal. The goal is control over your time, control over your decisions, control over your future. That requires systems. It requires converting earned income into assets consistently, even when it feels small. It requires thinking in decades, not quarters. Here's the reframe. Your job is the engine. Your assets are the vehicle. If you only focus on making the engine more powerful, but never build the vehicle, you'll just sit there revving. Loud, impressive, stationary, calm wealth is boring on the surface. Automated investments, ownership stakes, long-term compounding. Living slightly below your means, not dramatically, just intentionally. It doesn't look flashy at 25. But at 35, different game. Freedom doesn't arrive dramatically. It accumulates quietly. It shows up as, I don't need this job. I choose it. That's power. Not the salary number, the choice. And here's the final uncomfortable question. If nothing changes about your current behavior, where will you be in 5 years? Still earning more? Likely. Still dependent? Also likely. Unless you decide that high income is step one, not the finish line. You don't need to be extreme. You need to be deliberate. Start viewing every dollar earned as potential ownership. Start asking, does this expense increase my freedom or decrease it? Start building assets before your lifestyle builds walls around you. Because high income without assets feels amazing, right up until the moment it doesn't. And when that moment comes, you don't want to be starting from zero. You want momentum. If this hit a bit too close to home, good. That means you're thinking. And if you're ready to understand, the next layer, the subtle difference between just saving money and actually building wealth, watch the next video on your screen. Because most people think they're doing the right thing. They're not. And that small misunderstanding compounds harder than any market return ever will. I'll see you there.